holding those thoughts, we'll move on now to our final speaker, Tony Greenstein. Tony was the first Jewish person to be expelled from the Labour Party for charges of alleged anti-Semitism. He's an anti-Zionist Jewish activist and author. Tony's many achievements include his authorship of the recently published Zionism During the Holocaust. Welcome, Tony, and over to you for your 10 minutes.
Thank you, Esther. This has been, in many ways, a strange election. Firstly, Gaza was the main issue for the left and the genocide in Gaza, and the position of Starmer's Labour was shown to be, in essence, full support for that and unbinding loyalty to the United States. So I think in the circumstances, the left did not do badly. Certainly the achievements of the independents, who got 250,000 votes, and the Workers' Party, as Chris said, got 210,000, were a significant achievement. But the question that faces us is where we go from here. Firstly, just to talk about the Labour Party victory, it was no party has won an election on such a low vote, I think 34.4%. I had a look at some statistics about previous Labour victories. And in, what was it, 19, if I can bring it up here. In 1945, Labour got something like 49.7% of the vote.
Yeah, compared with
in 1951, yeah, when it actually lost to the Tories but got more votes, it got 48.8%. In 1966, when Harold Wilson won, he won, I think, a majority in 98. He got 48%. And even Blair in 1997 got 43.2%. So to get 34%, 1/3 barely of those who are voting, shows that the Labour Party today has very little social base. And it's not surprising, really, because the Labour Party didn't stand for anything. I mean, if you ask people why they wanted to vote for Labour, it was simply to get the Tories out. There was nothing positive whatsoever. So it really falls to us as to where we go forward. And I should also say, I don't think that there is any future any longer in working in the Labour Party, quite simply because there is absolutely no democracy in it. It is a wasteland for socialists. I know some socialists still remain in it, but there is no possibility of working when, of course, at the very last moment, a candidate can be imposed, like happened with Pfizer in Shingford. That is absurd. And I do think there is a need for a major campaign to get the trade unions to break from the Labour Party, because I think that will be the key issue. But I come back to the fact that what we did see something innovative. I mean, I worked in Hove for Tanushka, and for the first time ever, a far left candidate saved their deposit. She gained over 3,000 votes, 6 times higher than any previous left candidate. And that was replicated throughout the country. So people did come together. And you know, I mean, the left is splintered and always has been. I mean, part of the problem of sectarianism is that you see your main enemy not as the ruling class or the Conservatives, but you see it as the person alongside you is in a different party, and you think the differences between you and them are greater or more important than your differences with the class enemy. And that's been a fundamental failure of the left historically in Britain. And that is what we simply have to overcome. And I think, I mean, I would like to see a party created immediately like Crispin, but I don't think that's possible. I think we have to work towards it. And I think we have to create a socialist movement. And we have to say to all the fragments on the left, either you come and join us or you're condemned to irrelevancy. I mean, we've had for the last 30 years the Socialist Party's Trade Union Socialist Coalition. Well, they got 0.79% of the vote. The Communist Party of Britain got less than 0.5% of the vote. And so you can go down. Clearly, if you like, the far left sects simply have no purchase, and by themselves they will never achieve anything. So I do think that we need to come together. And the answer isn't, Chris, to join the Workers' Party, because the Workers' Party clearly isn't it. It's for the Workers' Party to join us and to come together. But I do agree, and I agree with Graham, that there are certain red lines, if you like. One of those is refugees. And I was really appalled. It's on my blog, so I mean, you can listen to it. When Galloway rants about refugees, 60,000 or 80,000 have already come by February, he says. People can't get a doctor's appointment. They can't get the children into schools. The idea, therefore, that the migrants crossing, the boat people, who are actually a small fraction of migrant labour anyway, are responsible for this, plays into the hands of reform. There is absolutely no doubt about it, because how do the rich and powerful in this country and internationally maintain their hold and their grip? It's partly by playing a divide and rule, by scapegoating, by actually pointing to one section of the poor and saying to the other section, they are responsible for all your problems. Meanwhile, of course, under our neoliberal capitalist system, wealth continues to transfer from the poor to the rich. So we have to get over that kind of politics. The reason why people live in poverty is not because of the boat people staying in 3-star hotels, as George said. It's because we give tax breaks to the rich. We tax them minimally, and we make sure that all the public services we have are being gradually wound down and privatized. So these are the main points that we have to make. And I'm afraid that when you say get over Galloway, well, I've worked with George. I think he's excellent on Palestine in many ways. I mean, I debated with him 30 years ago over 2 states, and he said to me, you were right then, Tony. And he's come round. So I've got no quarrel with him over Palestine, and I've worked with him. But when he puts out feelers to Farage, when he actually wants to become a Brexit candidate, when he actually does give, dare I say it, on the question of gay rights. I mean, I do think, Crispin, that when you say it's not normal, what you mean is it's abnormal. I mean, that's the obvious meaning of the phrase. And when you say you don't want sex education, gay sex education in schools, you're playing into those cultural wars of which the left can only become offers the casualty. I think we have to get over the politics of scapegoatism. That's what the right do. We should not do it. Our focus should be on those who own and control the wealth of the society and who are destroying the national health. And that has absolutely nothing to do with migrants. On the contrary, given we have Brexit, without migrants from the third world and the global south, we wouldn't have a national health service being run, because so many of the nurses and the doctors and the consultants come from outside Britain, because we're simply not training people in the first place, because that is not a priority. So the left does have to come together, and that includes the Workers' Party. But we don't need, if you like, Galloway to be setting that agenda. Now, the question of Jeremy Corbyn, I mean, he may be a figurehead, but I agree with what others have said. He's not an anti-Zionist. Unfortunately, when the right went for him over anti-Semitism, and he should have understood this because he's been attacked as an anti-Semite before us, as has anybody who's a Palestine activist, he should have fought back, and he didn't. I can remember when Jackie and me were suspended from the Labour Party, I spoke at a series of meetings, and my message was very simple. They may come from me, they may come from Jackie Walker, but we are really just collateral damage. The real target is Jeremy Corbyn. And yet when you read the Labour leak report, there was Corbyn saying, we've got to satisfy our stakeholders, i.e. the JLM. And if we get rid of Greenstein, Walker, Wadsworth and Livingston, then we'll achieved our objective. But of course, what happened was they did get rid of us, and then they simply came for other people like Chris Williamson. And so it went on. In the end, under Corbyn and Formby, they were expelling at a faster rate than Nicol had ever dreamt of. But did it help him one inch? Of course not, because as soon as Starmer came in, Jeremy was suspended. I mean, Jeremy is a wonderful guy. He stands for wonderful things, but he's not a leader. So we have to create our own leaders and our own leadership. And that is the task of a socialist movement. And the question is whether the left can overcome, as I say, the habits of a lifetime and actually realize if we want to see a different society, then we have to fight for it. And that means overcoming differences wherever possible. We do have red lines, and those red lines are on Palestine. Zionists are not welcome, and neither are people who target and scapegoat refugees and asylum seekers, because that is the main thrust of reform. And of course, reform is very dangerous. I don't agree with Ian, incidentally, although I agreed with most of what you had to say, Ian. I don't agree that reform is a fascist party. I think a fascist party is a particular political animal. It's a far right party, just like so many of those in Europe. But fascism is a different phenomenon. But of course, it does contain fascists, and it is a dangerous party. And we have to stand up to Farage and call him out for the nonsense that he represents. Like, I mean, he was what was he? A banker and a money trader on the stock exchange. I mean, the guy is hardly working class, but he's fooled many working class people in to vote for him. So the world is our oyster in a sense. It's a question of whether we can actually get it together ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well,
yeah, thank you, comrade. I I saw a lot of support for what you were saying, Tony, in the chat that you'll be able to see, and your red line being refugees and also Zionism, red lines being refugees and Zionism, echoing previous comments about common cause and specifically not being distracted by scapegoats, which is a typical tactic of the right and the media. So it's difficult to agree with any of that, isn't it, comrade? So